Greetings and welcome back once more to the Casual Wargamer. A couple of weeks ago, on the community section of this channel, I put up a poll. I was fairly certain I already knew the outcome of this, but I thought I'll put it up anyway and see. And it was, would you say that you are loyal to the company or to the product? Are you loyal to Games Workshop? Or are you loyal to Warhammer or Blood Bowl or Epic, whatever it is that you play? And I was 99% sure that everyone was going to go loyalty to my game of choice. And I'm not surprised. It was a foregone conclusion. So if it was a foregone conclusion, why did I bother putting the poll? Well, bit of interest. But it never used to be that way. This is more of a little discussion of what used to be back in my day, sort of thing. So, if you don't know the history of Games Workshop started out with two chaps, Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone. The two individuals behind the fighting fantasy gamebook craze of the early to mid 80s. Warlock of Firetop Mountain, Death Trap Dungeon, Island of the Lizard King, that sort of thing. I'm sure if you're old enough, you know of them, even if you never played them. And they started a little store in, I think it was the East End of London, or somewhere in London, in the very late 70s, called Games Workshop. And they were the chaps who got Dungeons and Dragons, or the license to print Dungeons and Dragons, or import it, whichever way it was, into the UK. And really were the ones that kicked off role-playing games over here, as opposed to the US. And they got on good terms with other companies like Chaosium, who do Call of Cthulhu, ICE, who did Rollmaster and the Middle-earth role-playing game. And they got over time, Games Workshop started printing these games over here. Until TSR basically took it all off and had a UK branch just up the road from here, in fact, in a little village called Cherry Hinton. But Games Workshop during the 80s was phenomenal. They were the epitome of how you run a games company. They started spreading stores out. In the end, Jackson and Livingston sold the company. But Games Workshop was the bee's knees. White Dwarf, for instance, back in the day, wasn't a catalogue for Games Workshop tat. They did a letters page. This is how people talked about things. They did reviews of fantasy and sci-fi novels and films. They did scenarios for role-playing games, general fantasy ones, and with little sidelines of how you can use this for AD&D, how you can use this for Middle-earth, how you can use it for RuneQuest, or something like that. And sometimes they had like these little stories, and they did cartoons. You had Thrud the Barbarian, Gobbledygook, I think it was. It was like a little goblin dude. And these were really cool. They did a variety of things. It wasn't just, and they were a games magazine. They were a games company. And their games were phenomenal. Not only did they import or print eventually role-playing games for other companies, but they also did their own Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. They did the original Judge Dredd RPG. They did board games up the wazoo. You had a couple of Judge Dredd ones. They were called Block War. You had Curse of the Mummy's Tomb, Talisman, Kings and Things. If you ever get a chance to play Kings and Things, it's been out of print for decades. But if you ever get a chance to play that, it's an awesome game. A friend of mine had it at school, and I begged him at one point to sell it to me. It was that good. Never did though. But the point was, they did a variety of games that were really well done. And they really focused on providing a product that people wanted. And the Games Workshop stores were great. It's not like they are now where they kind of really force you into buying and try and get you to buy stuff. These were places where you used to come and hang out with your gaming buddies. Even if you didn't play anything, you'd come and talk to the staff. You'd browse all the latest bits. Obviously, Games Workshop really made it with Warhammer Fantasy and then Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader. And it was the early 90s, I think, where everything started to go wrong. Games Workshop, at that point, decided that they were going to not do anybody else's stuff. Games companies around the UK were already being able to get hold of role-playing stuff and other companies' board games and stuff through suppliers like Esdevium. And Games Workshop basically decided that they weren't going to do that anymore. They were going to focus on their own products. And they stopped doing all the board games. White Dwarf became a catalogue. I can remember issues in the early 90s that quite literally, you'd flip through it. There might be an article and there might be a battle report. But otherwise, it was just pages and pages and pages of photos of models going, buy me now. And I think this was the beginning of the end. Once they decided that Warhammer, both Fantasy Battle and 40k, was their way forward, they even ditched things like Epic and Battlefleet Gothic and Blood Bowl. Warhammer was their license to print money. And you could see that's where it started to go downhill. I think it wasn't really until the early 00s where it started to become a problem. The end of third edition going into fourth of 40k. That's when you could start to see that they weren't interested in so much. That's where you saw power creep coming into the codices. Certain armies were always better than others. And I think it was the transition fourth into fifth where people started to lose faith truly in Games Workshop. And everybody was slating them. And it became a case of, and I think you'll find a lot of people still do it now. They go, I'm playing Warhammer. I like Warhammer. Sod G-Dub. I'm playing the game I want to play. I don't care about them. I'll 3D print models. I'll buy second-hand. Some people, will use other people's models, other companies' models, like the cool ones made by One Page Rules or Mantic Miniatures. I did at one point during, I think it was 6th edition, I bought a Space Dwarf army from Mantic's range in the hopes that squats were going to come back and I could use these models. But people are loyal to the game now. Games Workshop as a company, as a identity that people used to associate with, like they did 30 odd years ago, has gone. And I don't know what it was that made me sort of put the poll up. And I did include an option for other, please comment in that, if it isn't just Games Workshop or your game of choice. But nobody went for that. It was 100% I'm loyal to Warhammer as a game, as a brand, and nothing else. And unfortunately, I see that not just in the likes of Warhammer, but you see it in other hobby gaming environments. I don't know how many of you are D&D players, but the amount of people who dislike Hasbro/Wizards of the Coast because what they did or tried to do with the Dungeons and Dragons license means people are loyal to the D&D brand, not to the publisher. And I think we are definitely in that with Warhammer and Games Workshop these days. How could Games Workshop change that? Well, that's a very interesting question. I'm not a business person. I'm only a fellow enthusiast like yourselves, one who's been around for decades playing this game. And I like to think that I have an idea, but I don't know that it would be in Games Workshop's best interests. I think the way to do it now, there's two things that they need to do if they want to try and claw back some loyalty to themselves, not just to the game. One of it is to go digital. You've got actually a really good Warhammer 40k app. The AOS one's not so bad either, to be honest, but I'm still waiting for my army, my starter box to turn up for that. So I've only basically played around with the AOS app. But for focusing on the 40k one, the 40k app is really, really good. The rules are all on there for free. You don't need the rule book. There's no point you going out and spending whatever it is now, 40, 50 quid on the 10th edition rulebook. It's all on this app. Even if you don't subscribe, you've got it all on the app. But the problem is codices. Once a new codex drops and the index stuff disappears off the app, you've got to have that code from the back of the codex to put in there. I say, don't even bother doing that, Games Workshop. Save on the print. Save trees. Yes, if someone wants to buy the physical book, let them. Fine, they can pay whatever it is now, £30-35 a book. But what I would do is go, there are people out there who want to know the armies. There are people like me who like to read up on what I'm likely to face, to give me an idea what I'm doing. Sell me the other codices on the app as like DLC, downloadable content. Charge me 15 quid to unlock one of those codices, so I don't have to buy the book. That way, if I want, if I regularly play against, I don't know, Death Guard, for instance, I can buy the codex information from there to read up on them. Likewise, I'm the sort of person who every month, they'd get 15 quid out of me every month. At least I would buy a different army on there and unlock it. As it is right now, I was collecting codices, but the June update made me go, sorry, G-Dub, you're not having my money now. I've sold off the codices, bar the one I'm using, the Space Marine Codex. And I'm just going to use what's been leaked online, like Warhampedia. I'm not buying codices books now that are out of date before I've even bought the bloody book. Sell those codexes on the app as DLC. That'll go some way to doing it. Because this stuff gets updated. If they make a change, they do the June updates, whatever, put it on there. Likewise, give us an option for Legends on there. Games Workshop, you may not sell those models, but you know what? Some of us actually still play them. So why not give us Legends on there? If you want to make that something like, what Legends, we'll charge you another £5 or a £10. Fine. No one likes that, but I could see it for those who want to play Legends. So yeah, I say go digital. Do it all through your app. What you've got on Warhammer TV is crap. It's worth a watch once, and you don't put out enough decent content other than that. But get people subscribed to the app to make lists on it and sell them updates. Do it. The other thing is, and how can I put this? Games Workshop won't like this. I can't see them ever doing it. You have got to do something because of 3D printing. It may not be a massive thing right now, but give another 5 years, and I think households will have 3D printers, like they have printers now, normal printers now. The cost of these things will come down because they are so, they're not quite so specialist as they were when they first came out. People do want them. They can be mass produced, and even the resin type materials can be quite cheap, really, at the end of the day. And people are going to use 3D printers for stuff that isn't Warhammer or wargaming. You've got to start selling STIs. STIs? STLs. Sorry. That's slightly embarrassing. You've got to start selling the STL files for your units, so that people can just 3D print them. and they've got to be at a fair price. Because if I'm doing the hard work, I ain't paying you 35, 40, 80 quid, 100 quid for a model kit. I'm having to print the stuff. You've got to do them for reasonable prices. The problem with that is what stops Bob at your local game store buying that file. Maybe he buys it for 20 quid. What's to stop him from going, hey, anyone wants a copy of this? Tenner. Or even a fiver. He's only got to do it 4 times. He's made his money back. And he sells them. Or he sells those models that he then 3D prints. Games Workshop have got to stop being a miniatures company and become a games company again. Start doing things like this, and I start thinking people will become more... They'll still stay loyal to their game, but no one will feel the lack of loyalty to the company, or nowhere near as bad as it is at the minute. That's how I think Games Workshop need to go forwards to maintain a loyalty from their customer base, as opposed to their game having loyalty from the customer base. So yeah, just some random thoughts on that. Let me know whether you agree or disagree. On how would you, if you've got different ideas to me, which is fine, I would like to hear it. What do you think would be a good way of Games Workshop re-earning your personal loyalty as opposed to you just being loyal to the game? Let me know down below. Thank you for watching, guys. This has gone on slightly longer than I had intended, and I think I may have waffled a little bit too much, but hey-ho. If you enjoyed the vid, hey, give me a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button down here somewhere. And let's see some comments and discussion in a little bit down below. Until next time, thank you for watching. Take care. Good gaming.